You ever have a morning where just know, someone's about to ruin their entire life before they've even had their coffee? That's exactly what I felt the moment I picked up that bogus eviction notice. Paper's still warm, toner smell fighting it out with the Arizona sunrise, and I'm standing there in my boxers thinking, Brenda Kessler, you absolute amateur. You just stepped on a legal landmine, and you're not even bright enough to notice the beeping. Let me back up, because trust me, you'll want the whole messy, glorious story. My name's Henry Rivera. I'm nobody special, not really. 20 years on Phoenix job sites, climbing up ladders, running wires, until a bum disc made sure I'd never pull cable again. Sarah, my wife, she's the real deal, smart, funny, bit mysterious about her job, but everyone figured she was just another civil servant lost in the courthouse labyrinth. So we bought this little house in Sunset Ridge, a patch of suburbia outside Phoenix, where the air tastes like barbecue and chlorine and possibility. For 2 years, that's all we wanted. Just peace. I ran my little solar panel business. Sarah did her courthouse thing, and we let our neighbors think we were as boring as drywall. Then, of course, Brenda Kessler showed up. And if you've never had a run-in with an HOA president suffering a midlife crisis and a power trip, let me tell you, you're not missing out. Brenda came armed with a white Lexus that looked like it had been waxed by monks, makeup that cost more than my truck, and a burning need to manage every inch of our neighborhood. She took over the HOA like Caesar crossing the Rubicon, except with less charisma and a lot more clipboards. First week as president, she's patrolling the sidewalks like a mall cop, eyes sharp for anything non-compliant. It took about 10 days before our first citation showed up, folded under my wiper blade like a love letter from the IRS. Unauthorized commercial vehicle, it read, meaning my work truck, the same one parked in my own damn driveway. $75, 10 days, to appeal. Only problem? The bylaws didn't mention work trucks. Not one word. When I called Brenda, hoping for sanity, she told me, dripping fake sugar, the board interpret community standards as needed to maintain our neighborhood's character. You ever hear something so condescending it makes you want to eat drywall? That was Brenda. And I wish I could say it stopped there, but this woman went full Bond villain with her vendetta. Every week it was something new. Grass half an inch too tall, 150 fine. Cooking odors inconsistent with neighborhood standards. That was a citation for the Lucy family, whose stir-fry had always smelled like heaven to me. Patel's got dinged for parking excess vehicles during a family birthday. Funny thing, though, the only families getting harassed happen to have names like Rivera, Patel, and Lucy. White families with rusted RVs and dead lawns. Not a peep. I'm not saying Brenda's racist, but if the clipboard fits. Sarah, she caught on quicker than me. One night, she found me fuming over the latest citation, muttering about bylaws and injustice, and she started asking questions, pointed, legal ones about the election, the fines, the way Brenda had wormed her way into power. Should have tipped me off, that sharp glint in Sarah's eyes, but I was too busy playing defense to notice she was already plotting offense. Then, one evening, Mrs. Lucy came by. Sweet lady, makes dumplings to die for, always waves at the kids. She looked rattled, hands shaking around a crumpled notice. Brenda says our cooking smells are culturally inappropriate. She whispered like saying it too loud might make it real. I invited her in, and soon the Patels joined us, bringing their own stack of citations. Mr. Patel, an accountant by trade, laid out the numbers. 43 citations in 6 months, 39 of them to minority families. The pattern was too ugly to ignore. So we did what any sensible group would do. We started keeping records. Photos, timestamps, even audio when Brenda came by to bark standards at us. Sarah, meanwhile, started dropping by the county clerk's office, digging up HOA filings, whispering with that calm courthouse voice about election certifications and legal technicalities. If you're going to fight someone like Brenda, she told me, you need to out-bureaucrat them. Twist of fate, Brenda wasn't just a tyrant. She was lazy. Turns out, she'd never actually filed the paperwork to certify her HOA presidency with the county, which, under Arizona law, meant all her fines and threats were about as binding as a playground pinky swear. We were sitting on a gold mine of evidence. just waiting for her to trip over her own shoelaces. But Brenda wasn't about to slow down. If anything, she doubled down, calling an emergency board meeting to discuss my aggressive behavior and threats to community harmony. She stacked the room with her supporters, forgot to invite the families she'd been targeting. But news travels fast in a small neighborhood. Mrs. Lucy caught wind at the mailboxes, and next thing you know, we're all there, standing shoulder to shoulder. Brenda strutted in, armed with manila folders and the kind of self-importance you usually only see in failed politicians. "We're here to address Mr. Rivera's hostile behavior," she announced, voice dripping with that legitimate enforcement nonsense. I just handed out copies of the real bylaws, the landscaping report from Rodriguez, the works. "Can you show me," I asked, "where it says commercial vehicles aren't allowed? Or that stir-fry is a violation?" Silence. Actual beautiful silence. Then Harold Lucy, the board treasurer, a man so mild he once apologized for sneezing, spoke up, voice shaking but steady. "Brenda, I've read these bylaws 4 times. There's nothing in here about trucks, lawn measurements, or cooking smells." It was like someone had popped her balloon. But Brenda, cornered narcissist that she is, just got louder. She whipped out a folder claiming I was running illegal surveillance and encouraging frivolous complaints. I couldn't help it, I laughed. "You mean my own security cameras on my own property? And complaints that are backed by actual law?" Mrs. Lucy, bless her, brought the house down. "We checked with the county. Your board isn't even certified. You have no authority." The color drained from Brenda's face, but she still had one last, desperate move. "Fine. I'll take this to federal court if I have to. This community has standards, and I'll use every legal resource available." The phrase, "you people," dropped like a racial slur in a Sunday sermon. Even her supporters shuffled in their seats. Now, here's where fate decides to show off, because my wife, the unassuming government employee, just happens to be Judge Sarah Rivera, Federal District Court. Brenda, in her rage, had escalated her HOA circus right into Sarah's professional playground. You could almost hear the karmic gears grinding. 3 days later, Brenda's certified mail went out to every problem family. Ultimatums about compliance, eviction threats, and her new favorite phrase, federal court consequences. Panic spread faster than wildfire. Families who'd never even heard of the Fair Housing Act were suddenly terrified they'd be kicked out for making tacos on a Tuesday. So we fought back. Barbecue diplomacy in our backyard. 18 families sharing stories, waving bogus citations, comparing horror stories. That's when Mr. Patel dropped the real bomb. I analyzed the financial records. Brenda's collected nearly $5,000 in illegal fines, all funneled into an account with her name on it. Not just harassment. Now, we had embezzlement. Federal fraud. This wasn't just HOA drama. This was a crime spree with a spray tan. And then, as if the universe wanted to hammer the point home, Janet Peterson, the original Brenda supporter, came forward, pale as a ghost. Brenda had called her, talking about final solutions for problematic families, researching federal housing law, trying to find a judge who would understand community standards. She even texted Janet, bragging about her plan to file cases in Judge Rivera's court. My wife's court. That night, Sarah went full Terminator, quiet, methodical, laying out every piece of evidence on our kitchen table, color-coding files, cross-referencing citations. When she finally looked up, her eyes were hard as granite. Brenda is planning to forge documents in my court, using my name against my own family. She has no idea who she's messing with. It was equal parts terrifying and, honestly, a little bit exhilarating. The plan was simple. Let Brenda commit her crime. We documented everything, installed 4K security cameras, coached the neighbors on recording every interaction. Mr. Patel ran spreadsheets tracking every violation. Arizona's one-party consent laws were suddenly our best friend. If Brenda so much as sneezed in a fraudulent way, we'd have her on tape. And then it happened. Monday morning, 6:17 a.m., Brenda slips her piece de resistance under our door, an eviction notice signed by Judge Sarah Rivera, complete with a fake federal seal and a case number that was literally Brenda's birthday. She demanded $2,400 in federal violations and threatened to have U.S. Marshals remove us in 72 hours. The crazy part? She copied 12 families with identical forgeries. I called the federal courthouse, just a concerned citizen, scared out of my wits. Clerk looked up the case number. Sir, that doesn't exist. And Judge Rivera hasn't issued any eviction orders this year. If someone's forging federal court documents, you need to call the FBI. Done and done. The trap snapped shut. Brenda, emboldened by her own delusion, called an emergency HOA meeting to announce her federal court victory. Invited local news, handed out fake court orders like party favors, and started reading names. Rivera, Lucy, Patel, one after another, telling everyone they had 72 hours to get out. Sitting quietly at the back was Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Martinez, recorder running, documenting every word. Then Brenda, not satisfied with merely committing federal crimes, doubled down. She bragged about researching Judge Rivera's previous decisions, studying federal formatting, and forging the judge's signature to save the community. Folks, you can't write satire this good. Next morning, FBI agents knocked on our door. Full suits, badges, the works. They took statements, collected documents, filmed Sarah as she explained the difference between her real signature and Brenda's toddler scrawl forgery. This isn't just identity theft, one agent said, shaking his head. She's impersonated a federal officer, committed mail fraud, violated civil rights, and tried to use the U.S. mail to threaten a federal judge's family. Each charge carried years in federal prison. The pièce de résistance? Brenda called a final compliance meeting that afternoon. She walked in, head high, wearing her best pearls, ready to hand out deportation notices to the family she'd spent months terrorizing. Half the neighborhood showed up. Local news was there. So was Attorney Martinez and Sarah, still in her judicial robes. When the agents walked in, you could hear a pin drop. Brenda Kessler, Agent Rodriguez, said, "You're under arrest for federal document fraud, impersonating a federal officer, and civil rights violations." Brenda went from proud peacock to deer in headlights in half a second. When Sarah stepped forward, voice steady as an earthquake, and said, "You forged my signature. You claimed I supported discrimination I've spent my career fighting, and you did it to my own family." Brenda just collapsed into a chair, white as printer paper. The aftermath? Brenda pled guilty, 14 federal felonies, 32 months in prison, restitution out the wazoo. Her precious Lexus and McMansion auctioned off to pay the family she'd hurt. The story exploded. National news, memes, think pieces about HOAs gone wild. Sarah wrote a legal guide on fighting HOA abuse that's now required reading in law schools. Mrs. Lucy got elected HOA president, kicked off diversity potlucks and cultural festivals, and now our block smells like the best United Nations food court you can imagine. You know, people always say justice is slow. Maybe sometimes it is. But sometimes, when karma finally finds your address, it shows up with FBI agents and a federal judge wearing a t-shirt that says, "Justice serve hot." I still walk the block every night, nodding at neighbors, laughing kids, music in a dozen languages. My truck's in the driveway, shining in the sun. The lesson? Sometimes the law isn't just some abstract thing. It's a shield, but only if you're brave enough to pick it up. And sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who end up writing your sentence. But here's what I wonder, and I want you to tell me. When does standing up to abuse become its own kind of power? Where's the line between justice and revenge? Between community and control? I want to hear your stories, your thoughts. Have you ever gone toe-to-toe with someone who thought they were untouchable? What does justice look like to you? Drop your truth in the comments, because if we don't share these stories, the Brendas of the world just keep printing their lies. So what would you have done? And who in your life is just one forged signature away from karma?